most people, college is just a waste of time and money, especially now with podcasts like yours, where you could probably learn just as much from than you can on a college degree. But for most people, inflation is a choice. It's not an excuse. You still got to compete with that 35-year-old or 30-year-old or even 21-year-old that's just created this cool AI app that could destroy your business from the bedroom. Yeah, my first bit of advice is don't take advice from anyone who hasn't really lived it.
Good morning, folks. Welcome to Ash Allen Talks. Today's guest is Joshua Gould, CEO of the bigword, a global language technology and service company that scaled from $6 million to over $100 million in revenue. Joshua is known for his hands-on leadership style, disciplined execution, and strategic approach to scaling. He has led multiple M&A transactions and invested more than $20 million into AI automation, transforming operations while protecting margins and building predictable revenue engine. In a world where many founders talk theory, Joshua brings real-world execution, integrating executions, driving operational excellence, and scaling sustainability in competitive markets. Today we are going behind the scene of scaling, what actually works, what breaks, and how to build real enterprise value. Joshua, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Ash.
Awesome. At the beginning of the podcast, and I have met a lot of entrepreneurs before too, and I am raising the question that how you jump into entrepreneurship from this traditional 8 to 5 or 9 to 6 jobs, and what is the stepstone for you?
Yeah, so I never went to college. I went to the school of life, as they say, and there was never, I never had the expectation of a 9 to 5. And if you don't go to college and you want to make something of your life, then you have to, view it as an opportunity to get ahead, because everyone else is going to college and they're going to come out of college and they are going to come out with their degree. What are you going to have in 3 to 5 years' time? So you have to have phenomenal work experience, phenomenal knowledge, but also phenomenal experience, just in general, commercially. So even when I started out in a call center for Coors, I don't know if you know the beer company, the American beer company, but I worked for them in the UK. I didn't see it as a 9 to 5. I saw this as a 7-day a week. I wanted to be the number one salesperson in all of Coors. And, within 9 months, I was. It wasn't always number one. It was me and another guy, and we used to fight each other over how much beer we could sell into what they call free houses. So right from the beginning, I never viewed it as, a 9 to 5. I don't think that you can have some kind of planned work-life balance unless you're doing a very low paid job, and that wasn't my goal in life. And I don't think that it's wrong to want that and to do that. But I wanted an adventure. That was my number one goal. I wanted to do something that made a difference in other people's lives. That was my number 2 goal. Number 3 is I wanted to be financially capable to essentially look after myself and not be a burden on society or my parents. And those are the main drivers to not go to college. I saw college as a roadblock in those goals. I wasn't trying to become a doctor or an attorney. I don't think there's anything wrong with those. I want my heart surgeon to have a really good college degree. But for most people, college is just a waste of time and money, especially now with podcasts like yours, where you could probably learn just as much from than you can on a college degree.
True, 100% agree on that. And Joshua, when we talk about the entrepreneurship and the market and the macroeconomy, Right now, a lot of people concerned about some macroeconomical theories, especially when it's come to inflation. So we know that US right now 2.4 and UK 3%. And how you see this inflation can impact on business and the real world life. I mean the business setup and the personal life. And how are you viewing that one as an
Yeah,
entrepreneur?
it's a good question. I mean, it depends what you mean by inflation. If I am a minimum wage employee here in the US, I get somewhere around $12.50, I think, in Florida. I I'm a victim of inflation, right? If inflation is up, real inflation is probably around 6% right now in the UK and most of Europe and the US. I think CPI is down just below 3%. Um, but I'm a victim because all my money is going on rent and food and transportation. I don't have anything, to choose. I just have to survive. And I think that this is the same in businesses. If you're a really small business and everything is really tight, I'm talking a few $100,000, then there's not a lot you can do. I mean, there are always things you can do, but there's not a lot. But for most people, inflation is a choice. And believe me, like I have 15,000 interpreters in my supply chain. These are contract workers who work for me, and their price has inflated well beyond what the CPI is. And that's not my choice, obviously. It's not something that I would have liked to have happened. But I do get a choice if I want to automate all the processes within the supply chain. I get a choice of where I want to put my call center to manage that supply chain. So we made that choice to move it uh, from a high cost country to a low cost country. I got it, we invested millions into automation. Everyone talks about AI, but what about automation? Automation could potentially be a better saving than machine learning. And then when you combine them both, you can see further savings. So actually, I saw inflation in my supply chain, but my cost to produce the actual products I sell went down. And I think that there's an oversimplistic look at inflation, and people use it as an excuse, as I spoke about in my last podcast, that I have one called Execraft on YouTube. I think people are using it as an excuse to overspend, in their personal life, not just in their business life. People are saying, look how much money I've got to spend on my car. No, you don't need a brand new car. I drive a car that costs under what the average car costs in America, but I make way more than what an average person makes in America, probably 5 times more than what an average person drives in America. I live in a 3-bedroom apartment with my kids, a very nice one, but I opted not to go for that house because the house costs 2 to 3 times more. And what I do with that money is I put it into other investments, let other people pay my mortgages, and then I can make money on inflation. Inflation isn't a bad thing for businesses. If you've got assets, those assets are worth more. If you've
Mm.
got products and stock, inflation's helping you. So I think economists do a horrible job of explaining why inflation is good or bad. I think they never talk about it being good. They only talk about it being bad. But if you're in the real estate business, inflation isn't bad at all.
Yeah. And Joshua, when we talk about in common ground, so these days we know Nvidia and Microsoft,
Yeah.
the stock prices and all, the Apple Incorporation, and all talk about AI, AI. So how this AI impacting on the business is a common question, but a lot of people realize now that automation and the AI can help along in supply chain, especially as you mentioned before.
Mm.
So how the cost saving percentage of a business when we implementing the AI? Because
Yeah.
implementing AI is not a cheap thing at the beginning. The time frame it take to uh, reverse that expenses as a revenue is a huge, and some people don't see opportunity there, but a lot of people feel there is something happening, but they have never seen physically or mentally, they have no idea what's going on in the market. So how you
Yeah.
seeing this AI can impact the business and how it can turn the loss-making business to a profit level?
Yeah, so I think the way we look at inflation is a bit like the way we're looking at AI in a very simplistic way. You wouldn't talk about HI, and I don't know if you know what HI is, Ash, but it's human intelligence.
Human
We
intelligence,
wouldn't
yeah.
say, yeah, we wouldn't say how is human intelligence affecting business. And it's partly because we've had it since the beginning of time. Um, we've got to look at AI in the sense of a product or a set of products, not the fact it's artificially intelligent. Because, if you have a thermostat, I know you're based out of Dubai, and I'm sure you have a thermostat there in air conditioning. Um, 25 years ago, you could essentially tune the thermostat to know it to come on and off at a certain time and set it to a certain temperature. It's artificially intelligent. We've had AI for a long time. Now, what we've got now is something called large language models, and that's what ChatGPT is. It's what Anthropic have with Claude. These are tuned on the entire internet and they're absorbing it. And it's making AI smarter. And it's changing how it can interact with real humans. It's more human-like. But we've had AI for a very, very long time. I incorporated AI in 1998 in my business.
Wow.
And that was genuine machine learning. In 2013, the big word incorporated neural, which is what this current crop of AI is. That's 2013. It wasn't large language model. It was tuned on sets of corpora, which is basically the same thing as an LLM, but with a narrower data set. So we've had this as humans, and it's integrate. Most successful companies have integrated artificial intelligence for decades into their business. We just didn't call it that. We called it different things. It was machine learning during, most of my career, and now it's just AI. And
Mm,
you know, when I see AI, it reminds me a lot of the dot-com boom and bust. And
yeah.
why did the bust happen? It wasn't because internet wasn't real or it wasn't going to change our lives or it wasn't a big deal. In the same way as AI will change our lives, it's a huge deal. But it's because a lot of people that built companies on the back of the internet didn't actually add any value. They didn't actually create a product that was sellable. There was not, it was a product that was often looking for a problem rather than a solution to a problem. So my advice, and when I do these podcasts, I try and give, people who are listening just one or two things. If that's all they remember, they're going to take away. When you invest in AI, make sure it's solving a real problem. It's not just
Yes.
AI for the sake of AI. If you're using ChatGPT and all of a sudden you're pumping out 20 times the amount of emails a day, so what? Maybe it's just white noise. Maybe you're able to do 20 times more, but is that solving a problem? Is there a return on investment? Where we've deployed AI in our business is within the call centers. So we have call center agents, and our linguists, when they call up, to find, to make a cancellation or to dispute a payment, they can speak to our AI and get these resolutions dealt with really quickly compared to when they just go through to our call center. It's actually driving down our cost base as well, which we can pass on some of those cost savings to our clients or invest it in further R&D. And we have other AI that we're bringing out where it's not human quality interpretation, but it's really good interpretation. And our clients will provide a human interpreter. So, for example, a hospital, when you go to a hospital, you might get a big word interpreter and it will be in person or it'll be on video. But what happens when you go and check in that hospital? Well, there's no interpreter there. What
Yeah.
happens when you try and do the forms to sign up for the hospital? Often there's no interpretation there
Yeah.
or translation, which is the written word. So we can then deploy that. And what I think you're going to see in AI, Ash, and this is what really excites me and makes me not scared of AI at all. You are going to see a giant boom in just macroeconomics because what was possible 5, 10 years ago you know, is nothing compared to what you're seeing now in terms of scale. But like anything, once everyone has it, there's no, you haven't necessarily got a moat or an upper hand on your competitors. So my other kind of key takeaway is get there first. You're not going to have this unique selling point for long, but if you uh, take the AI bull by its horns, so to speak, get there quickly, get there early, go out to market. And it may hurt your business in the short term because you may have to bring your price down because something that you were doing by humans, like a tailor-made suit, is now being done by a machine, and you can't get the same price for it. But go out there and do it anyway, because if you don't, you'll become the next blockbuster. And I don't know
Wow.
if you're familiar, Ash, with Blockbuster, but they couldn't see a world where they could live without the fines, the Blockbuster fines. I mean,
Yeah.
you'd rent a video for I grew up in England for £4, so roughly $6, and you'd spend 15 to $20 on it because you'd forget to take it back for a week. And that's how it made all its money. And when Netflix came along and they did away, there was no fines. And Netflix wasn't a streaming platform back in those days. And Blockbuster said, no, Netflix won't survive without the fines. Well, we all know what happened. Blockbuster went bankrupt, and Netflix is now one of the most valuable
Hmm.
businesses in the world.
Yeah. And Joshua, when we talk more about this business, now we have discussed more about the AI and how it can cut the cost and how it can save your life. I think this is the future, and a lot of people seeing, but a lot of people addicted to the noise. AI meaning what? And the price of Nvidia, and a lot of investors are there to invest more money and pumping more money into a big giant companies. Even not just Nvidia. I have to mention Tesla also, the X platform. And so the people fall into the noise. And when we see the real value of the AI and the market value of these shares, do you think it's a bubble or it's actually creating the value right now, or when the people will feel the real value of the AI?
Yeah, I don't believe it's a bubble, is the short answer, Ash. I think there are some stocks that are overvalued, in my opinion. And it's a humble opinion because I'm not a stock trader.
Mm,
Um, but I think there are, you know, a few companies, a handful of companies that have the means to build out these huge engines. I think that the real opportunity is for you to take those engines and add significant value within your own market space. So I give you a good example. I, through an organization and a company run by Simon Broch, it's called a Woodley Capital. I invest in buying up single doctor or small doctor offices. And we were speaking to an oncologist, and he was explaining that he's taking AI that's built by Anthropic to look at images of that were taken during biopsies, and actually the AI was really good at pre-screening it for cancer. Obviously, they do a biopsy; they've got to actually do the full test, but the AI itself was pretty much 100% accurate, which
wow.
is amazing. It's solving a
Yeah.
real problem because, they were then able to, along with the biopsy, which is not always a black and white answer, give much more accurate. And sometimes the biopsy was not showing anything that serious, but the AI was, and they could do further investigation. So it's saving people's lives. But would you want the AI to run the robot to remove the cancer from you?
Mm,
Well, you might you might have a robot removing the cancer from you in the future, but you still want the doctor there because what happens if that robot needs a reboot?
yeah.
What happens if you get a bleed and you need to go into a bleed protocol? So it's not like the doctors are going to disappear, but instead of waiting 2 weeks for a result, you might wait 2 hours. And in fact, in this particular oncologist, uh, you do wait less than a day now to get your results because they use AI in every part of their business. But there are still 16 nurses and one doctor in that business this
Wow.
year. And if you look at last year, there was still 16 nurses and one doctor in there. But they're able to see more patients. They're able to drive more revenue. They're able to drive more profitability for a single location. And that's what makes AI so exciting. It's great for the patients. It's phenomenal for the investors and the business owners. But any change equals risk, and that's why you're seeing a lot of the PE companies and the banks kind of a little bit behind. They want to see how it goes. You know, they look at the world not from an entrepreneurial point of view, but from a risk management perspective, and that can be very frustrating.
Yeah, 100% agreed on those words. And AI is a big topic. And Joshua, we can talk about AI for another 2 hours long. And actually, we have to shift more on entrepreneurship. And I too have seen a lot of questions in my episodes and some of the comments that we have seen a lot of entrepreneurs keep traveling country to country and city to city and maybe flight legs and all. And we have observed that a lot of entrepreneurs take caffeine a lot, especially with coffee or alcohol, and they have trying to routine on that area. So how you seeing? Is it a healthy stuff, drinking too much coffee on the trip? And how you seeing? It's a general question, but having a deep insight on it.
Yeah, I can tell you, I've used alcohol to help me sleep on flights in the past. And, you know, there is the odd time when I have to use caffeine to get me through a keynote, you know, or a meeting earlier in the morning. But it's a really good point. We don't talk about health, you know, in
Mm,
entrepreneurship. And, you know, people romanticize the Elon Musk, you know, sleeping under his desk and working 22 hours a day. It's a great way to kill yourself, you know, to
yeah.
be frank.
And
And
Joshua, is that true? 22 hours working per day? What do you think?
well, you know,
Mm,
rumors are rumors, right? You know,
yeah.
until proven true. But I don't doubt it based on what I've seen
Yeah, what he
of him.
achieved. Yeah.
He's a,
Yeah.
you know, he's a spectacular CEO, but
Yeah.
it's not sustainable.
Mm,
And you know, I've been in the C-suite now for over 20 years, and I plan to be on, you know, in the C-suite for at least another 20 to 30 years. And therefore, you have to look after yourself. So I actually do often talk about, I'm glad you asked me the question, this, I don't drink coffee when I'm traveling, if or I'll drink decaf because I like drinking coffee and tea.
mm,
And I don't drink alcohol at all. And a few people I've had this discussion with, and they've said, okay, I'm going to try not drinking alcohol. And they're amazed because they say they don't drink a lot of alcohol, and they don't probably. But you wake up the next day, even after one, and you're slightly more tired, but not enough to know that you are. You're slightly less sharp. And as you get old, and I don't, you look pretty young, but I'm in my 40s, your brain just naturally will start to deteriorate. Your
mm,
sharpness deteriorates, your memory deteriorates. And if you're an older listener, you know, you'll know exactly what I mean. And you know, it's not an excuse. You still got to compete with that 35-year-old or 30-year-old or even 21-year-old that's just created this cool AI app that could destroy your business from the bedroom. So you have to view yourself as an extreme athlete, as a CEO and an entrepreneur. That means you are going to have to often work 18 to 20-hour work days. You are going to have to travel. You are going to have to do the red eyes, you know, through the night so you can arrive in the morning. If you're short of cash, you're going to do that anyway to cut down on hotels. But anyway, it's just how it is. Most flights from the US over to Europe are through the night. You're going to have to get up and you're going to have to give speeches. You're going to have to go to meetings. You're going to have to shake hands and kiss babies, as they say. So if you're going to do that, you're an extreme athlete and you have to treat your body. So, you know, I don't suggest people should completely go away from alcohol and coffee and become vegan. But, you know, it is what I choose to do, you know, and I choose to work out because it's a good way for me to get my competitive edge out. So I play pickleball and paddle when I'm not traveling. But I definitely think travel is a huge area that podcasts don't really focus enough on because nearly every entrepreneur is doing it. And it's
yeah.
one of the number one reasons why people say they burn out is not the long hours, it's the travel.
Yeah. True. And Joshua, one more important question regarding entrepreneurship. So, how you see the work-life balance?
Yeah, I don't. I don't. People talk about it all the time.
Yeah,
I'm not even sure what they mean. Like, you know, what does that mean? Does that mean you plan to work X amount of hours? And, what happens if you get a call, there's a cybersecurity attack or there's a client
exactly.
meeting to go
Yeah,
to, or, so, if you're going to have a family, and I do, I've got kids and I've got a wife, you have to bring them along on the journey with you. And you have to get their acceptance because if you're marrying someone who wants you home at 6 o'clock every single night, and you're expected to help with the homework, this life probably isn't for you. It's a choice. And it's one, everyone wants to be an entrepreneur until you are one.
yeah,
And then all of a sudden you realize you're making less money because most entrepreneurs make way less money until the day they sell the business than employees do. And you're working way more hours than you would as an employee. And you're making sacrifice. Like you've got mortgages when you might not need to have a mortgage because you are taking debt against your house to invest in your businesses. So this is the reality, and I'm not sure there is, but I can just tell you, my wife is superb, and we always talk about, and she has her own business. She has a business called
wow,
Falafel Love. She sells frozen falafel in supermarkets around America, but we talk about it regularly, and we've got to be a team. I try and make every significant event, and when I'm with my kids, I try and be extremely present, and we enjoy a lot of time together. I like to think that I'm a good dad that could improve, but I don't think entrepreneurship, on the other hand, is an excuse to be a bad parent. I think you've got to find your own way.
yeah. And Joshua, we have discussed a lot about AI and the entrepreneurship, and a lot of my listeners are all entrepreneurs and startup people. And what
Mhm.
advice you give to the startup people who are looking to come into the market and they are with might be there with some knowledge level or bootstrap level or a funding round or they are might be in several multiple stages. We have no idea where they are. But what's your common advice for them?
Yeah, my first bit of advice is don't take advice from anyone who hasn't really lived it. Most, advisors or people on podcasts, they're not really entrepreneurs. That's the nice thing about your podcast. They are coaches and life coaches and people who understand theory but not reality. My second bit of advice is there's a lot of money out there, but that doesn't mean that it's accessible for you. So really get to understand what investors are looking for. You've got two products. You've got your actual product that you want to create and you want to sell, and then you've got your business is a product in and of itself, and you've got to look at those two separately. You could have a really good product idea, and you could even line up a manufacturer for it, and you go out and you raise money, but people are like, you've never done this before. You're new to the industry, and how you're going to execute well. So you got to look at yourself as a product. So you probably need to have a really good operator that's got a lot of experience on your team. You might need a really good CFO, and you might have to go to them and say, guys, I can't afford to pay you today, but if we raise this money, then I can afford to pay you. So help me do the fundraising round, be part of my, management team product, and let's make ourselves really sexy to those investors and irresistible.
Yeah. And Joshua, where the listeners can find you and your services.
Great. So, I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn, Joshua Gould. My main business is the big word. So if you put those in LinkedIn, but I'd love everyone to go to ExecCraft. It's a podcast which I recently started. It's on YouTube. Uh, and make my day. Give me a like, subscribe, and please do the same for Ash as well. Thank you very much, though, Ash, for having me.
Awesome, awesome. We have discussed a lot about entrepreneurship, AI, and the technologies, and this flight leg, especially, and all, and more important topics. And it's very valuable conversation and the fruitful conversation. And thank you very much for your valuable time, Joshua, to spend with me. And see you in next episode.
No, thank you very much, Ash. Have a good day.